Welcome to A Little TLC, the podcast where we embark on an enlightening journey through the ever-evolving world of education. I'm your host, Heather Volchko, and I'm on a mission to empower educators and change makers to skillfully navigate the intricacies of serving our most exceptional students. Every month, we'll be exploring a unique and timely theme in a mini-series format, whether we're digging into inclusive teaching practices, addressing student mental health challenges, or exploring the intricate connection between our personal and professional lives. Each month offers an in-depth exploration of weekly topics that truly matter. I hope you're ready to be both challenged and inspired because this is A Little TLC. All right. Well, welcome back for another month of conversations. This month is all about compassion. So we're taking the lens of compassionate care, and I'm excited to have Waddell with us. He's our social worker, a longtime friend of mine, out there doing some amazing work on behalf of a bunch of students, kind of walking through some stuff in life. So we're going to kick it off with just what is compassionate care? Just in general, it is actually something that comes from the medical field. But with social work and behavior analysis, we sort of live with one foot in the medical field and one foot in a whole bunch of other places. So let's kick it off, Waddell. When you think of compassionate care, what is coming up for you?
So when I think of compassionate care, you're right, it does come from the medical field, but like being a social worker, you everything we do, it has to be compassionate. Everything that we do
Hmm.
with our, I mean, for me, I work with kiddos or whatever, but even with the parents, even with just the systems that we work within. It has to be with compassionate care. And compassionate care for me means just you're doing the work that you do, but you do it with a sense of like love and affection and like treating people like people. I do pottery or whatever, and one of the things I put at the bottom of every piece I have is a motto I live by, which is treat people like people. Um,
Right.
and like to me, that's compassionate care. To me, like treat people like people. Sometimes that means yourself as well.
Hmm.
But like treating people like people. So for me, compassionate care, when I'm with a kiddo that's been through some trauma, when I'm with a parent who is discovering the trauma of the what the kid is going through, um, you go in there with a sense of humanity, humility. Um, of course, in the social work world, it's more trauma-informed care is
Hmm.
the phrase that you hear more than compassionate care, but they're kind of they're kind of the same lens or whatever. Like you go in there with an intention of being
Hmm.
compassionate and being treating them like human beings, treating people like you're going through stuff. I'm going to walk with you. Like I'm not going to drag you. I'm not going to be the leader or sage on the stage, which I hate. I'm going to walk with you. Um,
But I love how you're saying, like, that's intentional, right? Like, that is a choice that we make
yeah,
as professionals to show up that way and interact in that manner. Um,
absolutely.
like, it's a conscious choice to demonstrate sympathy or empathy or whatever, other words you wanna throw around it, but just being sensitive to what the other person is going through, and I mean, if they're with us, there's typically a reason for it. And so,
Absolutely.
like, just honoring that and acknowledging that. I mean, you'll hear me say all the time, just be nice, right? Like, whatever,
Right,
just be nice. Like, it's not that
right,
complicated.
right. I mean, and it's like it reminds me of one of those things where I always say, love your neighbor because, like, for unfortunately for a lot of it, and myself included, don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect or whatever, but because you get in your emotions, you get in your moods or whatever the case may be, and you have to remind yourself, you have to be intentional about like just being, like you said, being nice. You have to be intentional about meeting that person where they are, and being compassionate and showing that. So that's in a nutshell, a lot of it. That's what it means for me, and that's what I try to do um, with every client that I meet with. But not even just with clients, like with anyone.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I try to go.
Well, and that's where I mean, like, it is just who you are, right? It's just how you
Right,
see people, so it's natural that that would show up in your practice.
right,
Um,
right,
and I know, like, a pretty big rub that will come from, teachers to service providers is like, sure, you can be nice and you can be compassionate and you can, do all those things because you only got one person in your office, right? Like, I'm stuck over
right.
here with 30 of them every 45 minutes, right? Or even more than that now, a lot of places. Um, but like, how do we I don't know, I guess, is there even a difference? Is there even a difference in terms of how we show up for one person for their specific needs or for a group of people that are absolutely going to have all kinds of different needs? Does compassionate care show up differently in those settings, or is it really just kind of the same intention?
I think it's kind of the same intention or whatever. Obviously, if you're in a classroom full of 30 kids or whatever, and you have to pay attention. I remember working in schools a lot, and I remember seeing um, you have a classroom for 20 or 30 kids, and one kid is just
Hmm.
losing his mind or losing her mind or whatever. And
Yeah.
it's like you're at the front of the classroom, you're trying to teach or whatever, and you're trying to give out a lesson for the day. And you want like it's part of you wants to ignore the kid and let the kid just do whatever they're gonna do. But that's not really being compassionate, right? And
Mm.
part of you wants to like stop your lesson in the middle of it, be like, "Yo, cut it out," and yell at them and scream at them.
Yep.
But again, that's not being compassionate. So you have to find a way to balance between being a teacher or whatever and being compassionate and showing that care for um for the kid. I would say this after being in I fully recognize how difficult that is.
Hmm.
Um, I after spending so many years in so many classrooms over my time as a social worker, um, you want to talk about a profession that is underpaid and undervalued and underappreciated. It's teachers, because like just the magic that you have to do to make a classroom um, run and work and operate and still get these kids to lessons. And when you really think about it, like we can all remember teachers, remember
Hmm.
lessons from like I just turned 39 years old, and I can remember teachers from like elementary school and middle school that lessons and things that happen, and like that's compassionate care in the classroom, and it takes talent. Like it takes
Mm.
absolute talent, absolute um, skill to do that. And I salute to the teachers.
Well,
Salute.
truly, thank you for saying that because gosh, especially coming out of COVID, I mean, it's definitely in the rearview
Oh
mirror at
my
this point,
God!
even though
Yes,
everybody's sick, right? Like, but my goodness, like it's the need, the challenges, the under resourcing, the
yes,
stress, like all the things that as educators we are showing up with on the daily. Just thank you for honoring that. Thank you for acknowledging that that is real and that is true because especially like I'm an educator and it was, just one more thing, just one more thing. So, okay, cool. Now I got to do all these things. And now you want me to be nice while I'm doing it, right? Like
right,
all
right,
these extra pieces. But
right.
honestly, like when I think about compassionate care in the classroom, it's just can my students trust me?
Right.
Like, am I demonstrating dignity? Like, do they have dignity in my eyes, and do they know that about themselves or about my view of them? Is that coming through a respectful interaction, even when some kids losing their ever loving mind? And then, like, can I walk that with them in a way, probably using some, like, I don't know, the way that I communicate with them, or the way they see me interact with either their peers or my peers or their parents, right? Regardless of the frustrations that I have and the assumptions I might be making, and even if the assumptions may be accurate, right? Like, but am I demonstrating some of these things in a way that they can see, like, no, like, you have dignity in my space. You like have the opportunity to choose to be able to trust me, and that I am actually trustworthy. And
Right.
that exudes through if I'm teaching the literacy lesson, if I'm working on basic math skills, if I'm, we're watching some science video, like whatever it is, that's just a manner of doing what I'm doing. It's not another thing that I need to be
Right.
doing.
Right. And that's the thing. I'm glad you said that because kids can pick up on genuineness.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
kids pick up on genuineness like that
Mhm.
more than are oftentimes better than as adults, right? Like
Totally.
kids pick up on genuineness. And if you doing whatever your lesson you're teaching or whatever your is going on in the classroom, you do it from like genuineness and you do it from like intent and compassion. Like they know when you're being real and when you're like, all right, this lady, she doesn't really care. Right.
Mhm.
She like she's here for a paycheck, which if you're here for a paycheck as a teacher nowadays, like maybe if that's all you're doing it for, maybe you should rethink your choices.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know, I just think we had a student, we were pulled in because the staff were kinda at their wits' end. They didn't really know, like, what direction to go next with this, young man, and the more we chatted with the team and spent time in the classroom, around the building, that kinda stuff, I ended up having to kind of have an uncomfortable conversation with the team that says, "Yeah, totally, he is calling stuff out, saying it in ways you probably shouldn't be doing, but is he wrong?"
Right,
Like, let's back this up a second and have that uncomfortable conversation that, like, yeah, sure, how he's communicating what he's saying, yeah, all right, we'll work on it.
right,
But if you don't want him to say it, then it shouldn't be true. Um,
right,
but part of that is coming through, like, wanting to be treated in a way that maybe we as adults are not treating other people, and that could be our students, it could just be other people around us, right? How many times do we interact with our colleagues in one way and turn around and have a different expectation of our students?
oh my
Um
god, oh my god. No, it's so true. I think one of the things that like I've said before um, is when you talk about like I'm trying to think of the best way to put it, respecting the humanity of children.
Mm,
And what I mean by that is, yes, you're a kid. Yes, you're still learning, you're still growing. You your frontal lobe or whatever, your brain isn't fully developed, yada yada yada.
mhm,
But you're still human and you're still an intelligent being. And you can still notice when stuff ain't right. And when we so often um, dismiss a kid's um, insight or information as like, oh, it's just being a kid. They don't know any better. And like you see it so often in so many
mm,
realms. Whether it's school, whether it's in social work, whether it's, I mean, like that kid is still a human being. That kid still is like able of seeing, yo, something's not right. Like this ain't. And what do they say nowadays? The math ain't mathing.
Oh yeah.
You know, like
Yep.
the math ain't mathing. Like they can still see that.
Yep.
By the way, that just made me sound like super. God, I'm old.
No, I love it.
Uh, Working with kids, I swear to God, like working with kids, they let you know how old you are all the time,
Yes, yes,
all
not
the
afraid to
time.
point that out.
Oh my God, no.
But I
Oh
don't
my
know, I
God.
feel like sometimes though I can take those conversations and spin it and be like, "Yeah, and that's part of my life, right? It's part of my story, it's part of me being a human," and, like, take that as part of the conversation, that it's not something that can draw dissension or draw difference, but, yeah, just means I'm a few more years ahead of you, and you'll get here
Right.
too, preview of coming attractions, like
The kids keep you humble. That's for
Oh, for
sure.
real, for
Kids
real.
keep you humble.
This week, it's Webinar Week. Dive into an exclusive webinar featuring insights from practitioners just like you, who've achieved remarkable success in their own corners of our education world. Whether you aspire to advance your career, explore new possibilities, or simply expand your horizons, our webinars cover a vast array of topics. Pre-recorded webinars offer the flexibility you need to fit learning into your busy life. You have the power to watch, rewind, and replay the content at your convenience. And did we mention you can earn continuing education units too? But that's not all. By becoming a member of the TLC Network, you gain access to professionals committed to walking this experience together. Learners get access to valuable webinars, enriching workshops, and engaging guest hangouts. Supporters gain access to our vibrant online community, monthly Q&A sessions, and joint discussions in a little PLC. Clever, right? Either way, you'll be among the first to access our podcast and blog pairing every week. Don't let time constraints hold you back. Embrace this incredible opportunity to invest in yourself and your profession. Join us for this week's webinar and seize the opportunity to learn, grow, and thrive on your terms.
I appreciate that you see kids for who they are in that moment, but that you can also see kids for who they could be, and that you're willing to help kind of connect the dots,
Yeah.
and walk that through with them, for them, and potentially even with people around them. But like that's not just like a professional choice of like you choose to engage in a career where you get to do that. But it's also just like a kind of what we were saying, like a way of being, right? That we're choosing to see a potential something that could be different and lean into that, and provide that other angle, that other option, and see the potential within a situation or a person that we believe that they can actually grow into. Because then we can
Right.
still honor, like, yeah, and life sucks and stuff's hard. And like there are things that are totally stacked against you. 100% true, accurate, and valid. But we can also fight against that, work against it, and become something other than it. And I'm so thankful that you choose to, engage in a career like that, but also that you just see the world like that you truly
Yeah.
can see the silver linings. You can see through the right now to be able to see the what could be.
Right. Right. Um, yeah, I try to live not just with my job, but with just my interactions with people and I'm always looking for the good in almost everything. Don't get me wrong; some things are more difficult than others.
Oh yeah.
Um, we're not going to get into politics, Lord, uh, but some things are more difficult than others. But I try to see the good in everything, and if I can't see the good in everything, in something, I ask questions why. I ask,
Mhm.
I'm quick to ask like, what am I missing here? Um, I mean, just to get into politics, but not too much, not too much. Follow me here. Like when I encounter people who have different political views than I
Mhm.
do, um, I'm always asking. So I refuse to think of you as less than
Mm.
just because you have a certain political view. I refuse to acknowledge, not acknowledge your humanity,
Hmm.
just because you have a different political view than I do.
Right.
So where's that common ground? Where's that? Right, what are we missing? What are you missing from me, and what am I missing from you for us to see the humanity within each other? And don't get me wrong, my wife thinks I'm crazy.
Yeah, but I think what you're saying is that you have to be okay being uncomfortable to be able to even consider extending that compassion, right? Like, you have
Right.
to be able to sit in something, if it's a conversation or if it's just, like, that emotional reaction that comes from, seeing something, right? It may not even be, like, a two-way street, right? But, like, there's a capacity to be able to sit with that discomfort and do it in a way that could be constructive so that you could say,
Right.
I feel this, I notice this, but I'm also choosing to hope for or consider or something else, right? Like, and that's hard. I mean, like, we
Oh,
work with our kids on that, but good gracious, as adults, that's hard.
yeah. No, it's very difficult. I'm curious to, like, for you, like, what drives you to do that? What drives you to do that?
Mm. I am in my heart of hearts, I'm a systems girl. And I get really frustrated when something that doesn't make sense around an individual is part of, like, what I would say creating their suffering. And so if I can leverage whatever role I'm given, whatever seat I have at any given table, to be able to mitigate some of those things, knowing that there are things in all of our life stories that can't necessarily be changed. If there are aspects that can be changed so that other things can be worked through, and we're not just simply everything stacked against, certain communities or certain students that, I'm working with, or even quite honestly, some staff in their both personal and professional situations. If there's something that can be done so that what I would call like the real work, like if the system can get out of the way and humans can just be humans, then like the work can be done, like why are we working within other things that maybe just don't need to be things?
What is your, like, what do you think made you this way?
Yeah, I had that conversation with my family. Maybe a couple of years ago now, because yeah, it was sort of the, "How did I get here? Why do I do this?" And I think it was my mom that actually called out. She's like, "You've always been drawn to the outliers." She's like, "Since you
Mm,
were little, like, playground, not thinking, all the social stuff you and I banter about."
yeah.
But, like, long before that is even understood. She's like, "You were always drawn to the people on the outskirts, the people who weren't included, the people that," she's like, "every time." She's like, "Look at your birthday parties, look at who you chose to invite, who you chose to spend time with." She's like, "It was always the people that didn't necessarily have a spot." And so I guess that's just who I am. Like, that's just how I started, and it has shown up professionally. And then, I mean, me personally as well. Like, it's just kind of who I am and what I do, and I try to just leverage anything that I have in any given situation, to, meet, serve, extend, expand, whatever kind of words you want to put on it, those around me.
Yeah, you know what? That makes sense. Even just thinking about our friendship and thinking about how I sometimes I think about the people who are in my life and who have been in my life and like why they're in my life or whatever.
Mm.
Um and like hearing you say that makes sense because the Lord knows I was an outlier. Um um for so many years. Who am I kidding? I'm still an outlier.
I was gonna say, I think we're both outliers. It works. Uh,
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. So yeah, that makes sense coming from knowing you and knowing how you always were and always are. And just the work that you've done, and the kids that you are drawn to, the stories you're drawn to. I mean, especially this work with TLC, just you're looking for the outliers. You're thinking about the outliers.
Yeah, I
And you're
mean,
thinking about the pieces. I often think of our society is like like we try to do everything like a assembly line, you know.
mhm.
Um, and on an assembly line, you always have the person, the quality control person, that's there to pluck out the things that don't fit perfectly or whatever.
Yeah.
Like you go to, or another example is when you go to the grocery store and oh, this apple has a certain
Oh.
bruise, so I'm not gonna like. No, that's still a good apple. Like what are we doing here? Um, and it's like let's go to that apple with the bruise. That bruise could be a very good bruise.
Mhm.
That could be like very juicy or
Makes
something like
applesauce, man. Come on.
that. Right, exactly. Exactly. So no, that makes sense.
Well, I think you and I are sitting here kind of having this conversation going like, this is how we see the world. So it's sort of obvious to us. And if I might be so bold, sometimes we struggle to work with people who don't. And we just, that is when we choose to sit in those uncomfortable moments and we choose to see the potential in them as, colleagues or fellow adults in the world. So I'm thinking like I'd like to kind of wrap up this week's conversation with just so how do we do what we do? How have we grown? We're talking about compassionate care, but there's a lot of overlap with emotional intelligence. And just like how do we do that? So I don't know. I'm thinking like for both you and me, we tend to be pretty self-aware. We're pretty introspective. We're, aware of our thinking, our reacting. We'll notice when we react to something and we're like, oh, pause, where did that come from? But it's kind of that emotional intelligence side of things that I think could be part of then being able to demonstrate compassionate care. Are you thinking of other things that are, I don't know, maybe what would allow people or kind of position people to be able to demonstrate compassionate care if it's maybe not their first go-to?
That's a good question. Um, you're right. It's hard. It's a hard question because you're right. It does come. I'm not gonna say I'm like empathy, like
Mm,
empathy, like yo, like really, really thinking. Um, like really being intentional and thinking about other people maybe having it different than than you. I mean, like, and the reason why that's difficult for me to answer because like I could look back on my life and I could look back on things that I've been through, and like that drives my empathy, right?
mm,
I that drives like struggles I've had, like losing my father when I was 15 and
mm,
being homeless a year later, and like that drives my empathy, right?
sure.
Um, but like the reality is, for a lot of people, that's not a lot of people's story. So it's like it's funny because you talk about obviously I'm sitting trying to study for my exam. So I think about like just the developmental stages of life that you have or whatever, and it's like a healthy evolution according to one of those old guys is like just get to a place where you can think about other. You can think about um, um, other people's perspective, other people's experiences, other people's like journeys or whatever. And even if you don't agree with it, even if you don't um, fully understand it, um, at least recognizing that journey as being valuable, that journey as being human, that journey as being something that that has just as much validity as your journey.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on something I was thinking of. Just, are we even recognizing what other people are feeling? Not that kid is flipping out, right? Like, oh,
Right,
they're angry, right? But like, are we actively listening to what is being communicated in the meltdown or in the withdrawal, right? Like when they're just pulling back and not communicating. Like, are we noticing? Are we like truly actively trying to see through what we're seeing to be able to figure out where it's coming from? I mean, I have the conversation that like anger is rooted in anxiety and fear, and it like blows
absolutely.
people's minds that they think, "Oh, angry, aggressive, out, lashing out and all the things." It's like, but where is it coming from?
Right,
And that's kind of the acknowledging the feelings or those emotions behind the behaviors. Like we can see what we can see, but where is it coming from? That's where the
right,
work can be done. But that's what you're talking about. Like, can we either, because we have a shared experience that we may be able to kind of tap into ourselves to understand where that may be coming from? Or can we just be actively present? Like, can we actively listen, not just to the words, but like to the situation, or put some of those pieces together on behalf of, honestly, some students that haven't completely put all those pieces together yet either, and that's part of why
right.
they're reacting. But I love that you're really saying, like, are we noticing? And like, are
Yeah.
we choosing to be present enough to be able to notice so that we can then actually walk them through it?
No, absolutely, absolutely. And that's the part that is like you have to be intentional about that.
Mm.
You absolutely have to be intentional about that because it is so easy to kind of dismiss it or I don't want to say dismiss it, but it's so easy to be self-centered in your own ways and like you have to be. I always say, who is it? One of the old philosophers. And sorry if I'm getting too crazy, but I've always thought about this. Like, is man inherently bad or is man
Mm.
inherently good? And I always say man is inherently selfish, and it makes sense that we're inherently selfish, which means because we have to be selfish to eat, we have to be selfish to breathe, we have to be selfish to you know uh, get jobs, education, yada yada. Right? It makes sense that we're inherently selfish because that's how we survive. But that also means that we have to be very intentional about being very unselfish. We have to be very intentional about um, considering other people, considering other perspectives, and viewpoints and stuff like that. Because that's inherently that's not something I feel that comes natural to us.
I mean, it goes back to, it's a choice, right?
Right, right. It has to be a choice. Absolutely has to be a choice.
Well, honestly, I think I'm gonna put a pin in it right there. We'll pause this week, and we'll pick up next week, specifically looking at like what does this look like in a school.
Sounds good.
All right, I'll catch you then.
Hey, before you jump back into your busy life, we want to invite you to head over to thresholdlearning.org, your one-stop destination for all things TLC. Here you'll find our blog with this episode's show notes, our ever-expanding bookshelf of resources, and anything else we've talked about. Trust us, there's a ton of benefits waiting for you to explore. Just head over to thresholdlearning.org, click on network, and we'll see you on the inside. Sharing the podcast with your colleagues is the easiest way to support the show. You can find us at Threshold Learning TLC on Facebook and Instagram. A personal recommendation is by far the best way to share the podcast. Let them know they can listen on iTunes, Spotify, and anywhere else they catch their podcasts. Just be sure to leave a rating and review on your favorite platform. You can email us at info@thresholdlearning.org. We always enjoy connecting with fellow educators and champions for educational justice. You can find everything you're looking for at thresholdlearning.org. See you there.